we're going to have a couple of warm-up speakers before Dr. Qumsiyeh. And the first will be Phil Brewer. He'll make a couple short announcements. Phil's been working at Yale Hospital, but not inside it. Go ahead.
Well, both. Well, thank you all for being here. I want to thank the library staff for their help and for their total support in spite of having received some angry emails at the fact that we are having this event today. If there are people in the audience who are opposed to what they're going to hear today, that's fine, but any disruption will not be tolerated. So I just want to make that clear from the onset. I would like to make an announcement that for the last 7 weeks now, after Mazin sent me an email after a weekend during which he's had several friends who have been killed in Gaza. And there was one particular email that showed me the tremendous strain and cost that this is having. And we were able to start organizing a weekly vigil in front of Yale New Haven Hospital to try to get healthcare workers to protest what has happened to the healthcare system in Gaza, which has been almost completely destroyed. Our next vigil, they're always at noon. They're across the street from the entrance to the hospital on Cedar and York Street. And our next one is going to be Wednesday at noon. Mazin is going to try to come. I looked at your schedule, that's a lunch hour. So I'm going to advertise that he's going to be there, even if it's only for 5 minutes. But I invite anyone who wants to become part of these vigils to stand with us. And we have Veterans for Peace, who have been a big part of it, and other organizations. So, thank you, and enjoy the program.
I should make mention that Phil is a retired emergency room doctor at Yale New Haven. Okay. Next will be Nadine and Naima from a great group, Israelis for Palestine. Would you come up here? So we're ready to go on the... The microphone like while I'm filling time here, this is considered, revolutionary or offensive by the politicians just this year. And a couple of college presidents lost their job in part because they didn't rip these off students. This weekend, the Pope made is it called a creche? Yep. And they put the baby Jesus in a kafia. So that is we should let people know the kafia is the equivalent of the peace sign in the 60s and 70s, which was despised then, and now is universal. Well, you're young and have good loud voices. Maybe I can... Okay, go.
Cool. Okay. Hi, I'm Naima. I'm one of the co-presidents for Israelis for Palestine.
I'm Nadine. I'm the other co-president.
Very hard to hear.
Oh, okay. We'll speak louder. Can you hear us now? Okay.
Yes.
We're the co-presidents for Israelis for Palestine. So we're here just to share some updates about what we've been up to, recent victories. that we've had. And yeah, so actually yesterday we won our referendum, which we passed through the Yale College Council, which basically, yes. Basically, we put out 3 questions to the undergraduate student body. One was on disclosure of military investments, military weapons investments. The second was divestment from Israel and military weapons manufacturing. And the third one was reinvestment in Palestinian studies and Palestinian scholars. So those 3 questions went out to the undergraduate student body, and we had about a little over half of the student body who voted. So around, I would say like 3,000 people who voted. And around 80% of all of those votes went to the yes. So, So now the Yale College Council is basically mandated to send a letter to the president, Maureen McInnes, to express that these are this is the popular voice of the students, and we would like to see something happen because the students have voted in this direction. So now that's the next process that's going to happen in the coming weeks, and hopefully something really great will come of it. But this is a very big symbolic victory for the undergrads and for Yale overall, just to see how much the student body has swayed and voiced their anger and their opinion, and that it's really important that student organizing is having this leadership role in the movement for Palestinian liberation.
If people want to find out more of your activities, do you have perhaps an Instagram page?
Yes, we have an Instagram. It's Yaleys4 with the 4, Palestine. And then we have one more update.
So the other things we've been working on have been in relation to the scholasticide in Gaza.
A little louder.
Oh, sorry. So basically we've been working on what the university should and can do about the scholasticide in Gaza, which is basically the systemic obliteration of educational infrastructure. More than 11,500 students, 750 teachers, and 95 university professors have been killed in Gaza, and there are no universities left in Gaza. And so we have been trying to push our administration to do something about that because we have a role as a higher education institution to protect life and to protect education around the world. And so yeah, many of our asks have been centered around bringing scholars and students from Gaza here and funding their scholarships, as well as rebuilding universities in Gaza or pledging to publicly. And also just building a Palestinian education program here. And yeah, we've spoken with the provost of our university, and it turns out that they are bringing 2 scholars from Gaza here through the Scholars at Risk program, which is really, really huge.
And their families.
And their entire
coming
families this coming year. So that's a huge thing. Obviously, we are demanding so much more of our universities, and we will continue to do so. So please continue to stay tuned and help us.
Okay, now it's my privilege, honor to introduce Dr. Mazin Qumsiyeh, a scientist. We met him in, I think, 2000 or 2001, and he was working on a project called The Right to Return for Palestinians, and so many things. You've read about him in the notices you've got about the event, but he's a scholar. His institute that he created back in Palestine after he left Connecticut, let's see if I can get the name right, don't tell me, Palestine Institute for Sustainability and Biodiversity. We have hundreds of peer-reviewed scientific papers, and so they're done great work. But while he was here from 2000, 2009, during that decade, he was doing terrific activism and organizing in many different areas. And You want to hear him, you don't want to hear me. Dr. Mazin, please.
What we'll do first is watch a short video, about 7 minutes, and then I'll present something for discussion. I'm Mazin Qumsiyeh. From my childhood, I used to go to the valleys, especially with my uncle, Sana'atullah, who was the first Palestinian zoologist. He finished his PhD in the US, and then unfortunately he died in a car accident a few months after he finished his PhD. His dream was to eventually build a museum of natural history. He didn't get to do that, but as a child I committed to finish his work, follow in his footsteps. My wife and I, after we returned from the US, we donated $250,000, and we started this Palestine Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability in 2014. And the museum grew faster than we expected.
From its beginning 10 years ago, the museum grounds became an oasis of peace and a magnet for people from around the world seeking to help people and nature.
في 2014 بلشت كمتطوع، بلشنا على تطوير هذا الموقع من مخزن للأثاث والمعدات ولمواد البناء. اليوم الحديقة اتطورت، صار في عندنا مسارات تخدم الزوار، تخدم كمان الباحثين. الحديقة النباتية تخدم الزوار للتعرف على بعض النماذج التعليمية زي البركة البيئية، أنظمة الزراعة المائية والاستزراع السمكي، الحديقة المجتمعية، بالإضافة لحديقة أطفال.
This institute serves as a great and unique educational tool for all kinds of people, whether students like I was, children, women, educators. We worked with more than 12,000 school students and more than 20,000 international and local visitors. Our natural history exhibit is also a great tool to teach people and show people all of the biodiversity found in Palestine. We also have a mobile educational unit, which is basically a museum on wheels that we take all over the West Bank to marginalized communities that are not able to reach us.
Our institute at Bethlehem University had miraculous achievements that are detailed in our 10-year anniversary booklet. Some of them include leading the efforts to create the National Report for the Convention on Biological Diversity, create the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, as well as formulate a new protected areas network. We developed valuable collections including thousands of invertebrate and vertebrate specimens, herbarium specimens, hundreds of zoological and paleontological specimens, rare and antique books, as well as ethnographic, historical, or cultural items. The Institute at Bethlehem University has become not only a national institute, but also a regional and global institute and a destination for researchers and visitors from around the world.
In terms of research, we published 128 research publications. We have also conservation efforts. We did community service, working with farmers, with marginalized communities, with women, to empower them to make sure that they follow their dreams like we followed our dreams.
The museum here is an oasis in the midst of the occupation and the war zones. It is a beautiful place to preserve nature and learn about the biodiversity of Palestine. I am learning so much as I volunteer here.
حابة أشكر المعهد على جهودهم المثيرة في تعريفي على التنوع الحيوي في فلسطين. من خلال الفعاليات التي شاركت فيها، حيث زاد حبي واهتمامي لطبيعة بلادي، وأدركت أن يجب الحفاظ على بيئتنا لأنها أساس المستقبل.
I'm addicted to love of this institution and all it stands for. I love to volunteer here and observe nature and busy people working to leave this world a better place for future generations.
I followed the dream of my uncle, and with the help of these volunteers and my wife, we were able to achieve more than we expected in those 10 years. I want to thank our volunteers and our staff and everybody who contributed to this project. Thank you. We now have less than 100 square meters for exhibits, but we are building a new facility that will expand our previous facility by tenfold. This building will have over 1,100 square meters, and it will have exhibits about the history of Palestine, including the history of the Palestinian Nakba, the destruction of our society as indigenous people. So I think it will be a magnificent museum that will draw millions of people over the next 10 years. This new facility can be completed. We now have 2/3 of the funding for it. There's a lot more to be done. You can support us by either donating cash or donating in kind. You can also donate your time by coming and working here as volunteers. All of this can happen with your support, with your help. Thank you. As I said, I used to work here at Yale University for 6 years, since 1999, and till 2005. And then I worked at private laboratories for two and a half years. And then I headed back home in 2008, and Jesse followed me very quickly. So I'll be very brief because I do want to leave a lot of time for question and answer. Primarily, I want to just update you on the current situation. Many of you have heard me speak before. So the first part is just very quick overview of what we are talking about. Palestine, of course, is this area. Oh, good, let's have dancing. They said, I don't want to be in a revolution where I'm not allowed to dance. So anyways, it's the land bridge between Africa and Eurasia, and that's where humans migrated out of Africa to the rest of the world. So actually your ancestors are all Palestinian, whether you wanted that or not, I'm not sure. Yeah, in the demonstrations they say in our thousands and our millions we're all Palestinians, right? So this is true actually in some sense also, except unless you are African, of course you stayed in Africa. But this land, the Holy Land if you want to call it, or the land of Canaan, is part of the Fertile Crescent, at least the western part of the Fertile Crescent, where humans first developed agriculture, where we first domesticated plants and animals, plants like olive trees, wheat, barley, lentils, chickpeas, hummus. I'm sure you had hummus. All of this. And the people of the land, by and large, from a genetic standpoint, I used to be a medical geneticist, trace their ancestry for thousands of years. If you take bones of people there 50,000 years ago and you analyze the DNA, you find similarities with the DNA of current day Palestinians. That, including me. That doesn't mean that there was no mix-up of some populations, and certainly Palestine was subjected to evolution of religions and cultures that came and went, but largely the stock, 99.8%, remained indigenous Palestinians. But we Palestinians consider anybody who comes into the country peacefully, doesn't want to kick us out, they're welcome to become citizens of the country, and indigenous people, of course. So this picture from 1932 shows the diversity of cultures and backgrounds and religions. These people, religious and secular leaders, got together to object to the Balfour Declaration and the idea of a Jewish state in Palestine. Why would they object to that? Well, the answer is in the picture. They like the diversity of people there. Christian, Muslim, Jews, Baha'i, everybody, Druze, and Christians of various denominations, etc. If there's a message I want you to take home from my talk, my major advisor used to tell them the message and repeat it 2 or 3 times so that they remember it if somebody wakes them up at 2 in the morning and asks you what I talked about. Here's the message: that there's human diversity and there's biological diversity, and those are 2 good things. That colonialists, including Zionists, are against both, against human diversity and against biological diversity. This is the take-home message. Now you can go home, some of you. Palestine has been a healthy country living in harmony with nature and people among each other for thousands of years. We had very little conflict, less than most countries on earth, by the way, which may surprise many of you thinking that Western Asia, the Middle East as they call it here, colonial terminology by the way, Middle East, but it's okay, now it's common usage. So, no, we have not been fighting each other. In fact, if you take away this conflict, you'll have to go back to the Crusaders, another conflict that came to us from outside, also from Europe. Europe seems to export these problems, but that's another story. But anyway, that's between the Crusaders and this conflict. What happened? Peace, there's no problems. Now, what is this conflict? This conflict is very clear. It was the idea of taking a country that's multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious, and even multilingual. Before 1948, 44 languages were spoken in Palestine. Take such a pluralistic country and make it the Jewish state of Israel. It's as simple as an idea as that. It sounds easy, but what are you going to do with the 97% of the population who's not Jewish? So that's the conundrum, if you want, the problem that we faced. And indeed there was ethnic cleansing of Palestine. So you can see on the map on the right the Palestinian villages and towns that were depopulated in 1948, 49 and 50, and continuing to this day now. Gaza is being ethnically cleansed as we speak, and not only ethnically cleansed but also genocided, verb. Over 300,000 estimate of people killed in Gaza, and about the same number outside of Gaza now, 300,000. So roughly Gaza is reduced by about 1/3 of the population, and it's an ongoing process. This is not unfamiliar to you here in North America, of course, because that's what happened precisely in this country, where the land was shrunk after, quote-unquote, the Europeans discovered it, i.e. discovered this natural resource that they could steal and whatever. This is what they call displacement settler colonialism. And displacement settler colonialism has many ramifications. This is one of the ramifications. Over 300,000 of us have been killed. Actually more than 1 million have been injured. I should update this slide. And over 1 million who have been imprisoned and detained. Many of you here are old friends. Remember from 2001 when we brought Hayam Sayed from Gaza here because Yale Eye Center and others, Palestine Children Relief Fund, helped us bring a bunch of Palestinian children for treatment in the US. She was shot with a rubber-coated steel bullet when she was 7 years old in Gaza. In 2001, we brought her and fitted her with prosthetic eye. She went back to Gaza with her mother. So she's now approximately 30 years old, almost 30 years old. She has since had a son. You can see his picture on the right. Unfortunately, the prosthetic eye, she outgrew it, and there's no place in Gaza to get prosthetic eyes. But Stan remembers this girl because he was very involved in helping with her. And when, she really loved you, Stan. She even, in the WhatsApp messages that I correspond with her, she still remembers you. She's of course living with her family in a tent. A lot of their relatives were killed. Their house is completely gone. These pictures were taken in September 2023 before the attacks, the genocide of Gaza. She did send me other pictures, but I won't show them to you because it would be very depressing. But basically, they are emaciated, they are hungry, they don't have any food, etc. This is another girl we brought to Connecticut, and you all also must remember her. Her name is Marwa Sharif. She was shot by an Israeli bullet in 2002, I believe. Where the bullet came from one end, lodged on the other end of her head, and it's delicate neurosurgery, so obviously there was no such services in the West Bank, or in our country, so we ended up bringing her here. A brilliant neurosurgeon took care of her. No, this was 2001. The reason I remember this is from the picture on the right, which is an Associated Press picture. As she was recovering, September 2001, 11 September, and she was with her mother at the Berlin Mosque on September 12, praying for the victims of September 11. So she is a victim of state terrorism, praying for the victims of the terrorist attacks on 2001. In the US, and it made the front page of the Hartford Courant. I remember yesterday I showed this picture at the Berlin Mosque where it was taken, and they were pretty moved by this event. I have, of course, the number of injured people are countless that I know. The number of people who were killed, I can count those. For example, 24 in the West Bank and more than that in Gaza. The ones in Gaza were essentially, most of them were killed in the past 13 months. This is one that I lost in the West Bank. His name is Basil Araj. He participated with me in nonviolent resistance, including the Palestine Freedom Riders, where this picture was taken, me and him and a few other activists. He was hunted by the Palestinian Authority, and the Palestinian Authority arrested him and tortured him in jail, and we made a campaign to release him. They did release him, but after that he went underground, and a few months later he was found with 26 bullets after 26 actually holes, not bullets, because a bullet can come from one end and go to the other end. But 26 holes in his body after the Israeli raid on his apartment in Ramallah. Our situation, of course, is very tragic in terms of the human killing and injuring. But an area that I will be talking about in the next 2 days at Yale, where an environmental group has invited me, environmental graduate students and others, I'll be speaking about the ecocide. So there is genocide, but there's also an ecocide, an environmental catastrophe that's destroying our country. And of course, all of these things, settler colonialism is associated with climate change, associated with pollution, associated with habitat destruction, and so on. Israel, for example, uprooted tens of millions of Palestinian native trees, both domesticated trees and wild trees, domesticated trees like olives, figs, and almonds, and so on, and wild trees like hawthorn, carobs, and stuff like that, oaks. And in place of that, they did plant one kind of tree, which is pine tree, European pine tree, Pinus halepensis. This European tree is a monolithic, basically, society, culture of trees, and it's very bad for biodiversity, but also bad in a dry climate. So, you know, they are susceptible to fires, so you can see the fires here in West Jerusalem. After they burned the pine trees, they exposed the terraces that our ancestors had built and grown other kinds of trees on. Stan, can you please pass that sign-up sheet to people, this sign-up sheet? Thanks. This is our email sign-up sheet. If you use handwriting, please write legibly. There's a QR code in the back for the younger generation. I'm not good at it, but if you know how to scan QR code, then put your email directly there. But this is the destruction of our environment that's ongoing to this day, actually. This is, for example, Jebel Abu Ghneim, right next to my house, where they stole some land from my own relatives. There was a forested area before 1997, and then under Netanyahu's first government, confiscated and used for a Jewish-only colony in Palestine. This is what's going, on all the time. There's also mega projects like the diversion of the water of the Jordan River Basin, where you can see Jordan River, even the Dead Sea, which is neither a sea nor dead, by the way, it's an inland lake, is dried up, and the Jordan Valley is becoming a desert. This is what the Jordan River used to flow like at 1,350 million cubic meters per year, and now it flows at only 20 million cubic meters per year. That's barely a stream. You could walk across it or jump across it. The reason they did that had nothing to do with needs of water by the Israeli colonial settlers. In fact, theft of resources is about destroying livelihood of the local people. And for example, in water, you hear of water shortage in our region, but really we don't have water shortage. Ramallah gets more water than London, but the difference is that for London the water is used by the people of London, whereas in our case the water coming from the sky goes into the aquifers. Aquifers are sucked by Israel to use for settlers and to throw away even half that water into the sea and so forth, because they want to deny us basically water. Why is Gaza besieged? Because of another natural resource called gas. Gas fields off of Gaza, which Israel is now exporting to Europe to replace Russian gas that used to float at, from Russia to Northern Europe through the Nord Stream pipelines, which mysteriously blew up. All the Western intelligence agencies cannot tell us who blew them up. But clearly, here's a beneficiary. Israel is now exporting our gas to Europe to replace Russian gas. That's part of the reason. There are other reasons for attacking Gaza. None of them has to do with Hamas or terrorism, so to speak. They have to do with geopolitical and other reasons. I'm happy to talk about that. But in terms of the ecocide, we actually did some studies. This study was just submitted for publication last month. It's about the destruction of tree cover in Gaza. We used remote sensing to map every tree field in Gaza. And you can see on the map on the right, month by month, the destruction of tree covers in Gaza. And on the graph on the bottom left-hand corner, you can see cumulative tree cover damage. So in North Gaza, it's over 90%, 94% or so. That's up to September when we completed the study and we submitted it in October and November, I think. Anyways, for 1 year, this is what had happened. South Gaza is catching up in terms of tree cover destruction. The same with greenhouse gas, greenhouses. And these greenhouses are being destroyed north to south. Same pattern we see basically meticulously and intentionally being destroyed to deny Gaza its food supply. The same for destruction of wild areas. This is Wadi Gaza, which I studied before in terms of its nature, fauna and flora. Half of it is now destroyed. This is what it looked like before. Unfortunately, I don't have what it looks like after. I was able to get pictures of greenhouses and tree covers in some areas of Gaza, but I was not able to get any of our Gaza friends anywhere near this area of Wadi Gaza because Israel declared the whole area military closed shoot on-site area. That's where they're just north of Wadi Gaza is where they are, have a 7-kilometer Netzarim area of split Gaza from north to south. The other thing is this impacts you here, okay? How does it impact you here? Wars are a climate change issue. For example, the Guardian newspaper did a study just on jet fuel produced by Israeli jets flying over Gaza. And this is how much 254,000 sorties, as they call them, or flights over Gaza produced the equivalent of 281,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. And this is just in the first 60 days, and we are now in month 13. In those first 60 days, actually, just from jet fuel alone, again, not bombs, not burning, not white phosphorus or anything, just jet fuels alone flying over Gaza produced more greenhouse gases than the Central African Republic produced in a whole year of industries, automobiles, everything else. So war is a climate chaos issue and its impacts us. So there's genocide, there's an ecocide, but there's also a medicide. And Phil, as a practicing physician, works on these issues. This is just statistics from the World Health Organization about what happened in Gaza in terms of the healthcare system. And yesterday at the Berlin Mosque, we heard also from Dr. Deborah, who went to Gaza in August and spent 1 month in Gaza treating patients there, and about the catastrophic situation of what happened in Gaza. There's also destruction of mosques and churches and museums. Over 300 mosques have been destroyed, over 20 museums and collections were either pillaged or destroyed completely. Over 3 churches were destroyed, including the 3rd oldest church in Palestine. You can call this whatever, but this one, destruction of universities. A young student spoke about the scholasticide. I actually wrote a research paper on this. If you're interested, I'd be happy to send it to you. It's also found in our website, palestinenature.org. And I lost many friends, colleagues at the universities there, professors and others. And you can see here, there's also, one could call it the veriticide, destruction of the truth, and the lies about this. Israel should get into Guinness Book of World Records for the number of lies that they have told over the past 76 years, millions of lies. But anyways, They also silenced the truth, of course, by killing journalists. They killed 195 journalists. That's more than all the journalists that died in the Second World War. So then you know, this is kind of set the stage for discussion on any subject that you want. But you saw the video about the museum, so I'm going to skip those slides, basically, of our activities at the museum, which are essentially a form of resistance to this. We welcome you if you want to volunteer with us. There's a lot of work to be done in these areas. You don't have to be a biologist to volunteer with us. We even have a group called Palestine Action for the Planet, which is part of Extinction Rebellion, and that works against climate change things. And we work a lot with women and farmers, and we have a community garden. You can volunteer there, and that helps us in food sovereignty. We just picked our olive trees, and you can see the children very proud having helped us pick olives. This is the number of volunteers we had in 9 years, the first 9 years. I should update the slide. But anyways, from 45 countries, most of our labor is being done by volunteers, more than 60% of the labor. And my wife and I are full-time volunteers. We left the US, both of us had 6-figure incomes. We left that to go back to Palestine in 2008 for a 0-figure income. And that's the best choice I've made in my life. And Jessie would agree with me if she's here. You can check with her. Anyways, this is what volunteers do, so you would be welcome to volunteer with us if you want to come. We offer room and board. As you can see in the lower right-hand picture, the volunteers eat healthy organic food and they enjoy each other's company. We already got 6 volunteers who found their match by volunteering, so if you're looking for a wife, that's also a matchmaking service. Anyways, this is what I showed you. We're building a museum. The video shows it on the outside, how it's going to be, and inside. I will end with this picture. This is obviously being born in Bethlehem is very special for us Palestinian Christians. There's Mother Mary and baby Jesus, and how they are depicted in an icon. But if you really want to know what they looked like physically, they would be like this Muslim woman and her son in Gaza in front of the ruins of their house. This is our website, and you can find out more about that, and on PalestineNature.org. You can email me at info@PalestineNature.org. So if you sign the email list and you don't hear from me in a week, because I couldn't read your email, then email me and say, put me on the email list, I send you information. And this is me being arrested a few times for non-violent actions. Here the soldiers need me. By the way, these soldiers trained the American police to do this, to be racist. Black Lives Matter is related to this. All right, questions? Feel free to raise your hand, stand up, introduce yourself, and ask questions or make brief comments. You're welcome to also ask devil's advocate type of questions, or if you're a Zionist, to engage with us respectfully and peacefully. We hear what you have to say. I'm happy to address those also.
I'm Justine McCabe. People I know who are very supportive of Palestine and Palestine human rights and liberation of Palestine will say, this is a kind of devil's advocate question, Mazin, will say, well, what does the group of Palestinians want? Do they want 2 states? Do they want 1 state? What is the dialogue going on for you with this regard? It happens a lot. Okay, and as you can see, the Western powers that be are already deciding what's going to happen, or think they are. So I'd like to know what the people in Palestine are thinking.
So basically the question is, one state or two state, what does Mazin think, and what's the conversation in Palestine as opposed to
fairly sensitive.
You know, people in power in the U.S. who are always talking about the two-state solution. Is this on?
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
okay. I think you're getting wrong, but start with that.
Okay, so basically what do Palestinians want, as Justine was asking? Well, what we want is our rights, human rights, basic rights. That's all we are asking for. We're not asking for the moon. It's very simple. And, you know, what do you want? What anybody in humans want. They want to be treated with respect. They want to have shelter and food and drink and live in their own land without somebody coming in and saying, hey, you know, I like this land, get the hell out of here, you know. And if you don't, I shoot you. That is what we want. It's a simple request. And so I would say we want human rights. That's it. And, you know, for example, and if you want a manifesto for going forward, take the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which has very nice articles, including like Article 13, which says everybody has a right to leave their country and come back to their country. That's the right of refugees to return to their homes and lands. Very simple. And then the politics sort itself out. I told people, I don't care what you advocate in terms of political arrangement, whether it's one state, two states, no state, confederation, whatever, but also one state. What does that mean? You know, we do have one state right now between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean. There's one state, it's called the State of Israel. That's a racist, apartheid, genocidal state. That's one state solution you want? Or is it one state in which people have dignity or whatever? So whatever solution you advocate, if it's two states, fine by me, but it has to respect human rights, which means the refugees have a right to return to their homes and lands. And not tell me, well, two states, 78% is Israel, 22% is Palestine, and refugees have no right to return. What does that mean? It means there's no human rights. So that's why it's really human rights should be the primacy. I wrote a whole book about the subject called Sharing the Land of Canaan, and you know, the subtitle is Human Rights and the Israeli-Palestinian Struggle. And you can read it on my website, which is Qumsiyeh.org. You don't have to buy it. So it is simple, very simple.
Many American universities kind of set up satellites in other countries. Would it be something that Yale or other American universities could do to commit to setting up, you know, some sort of operations in Palestine going forward in the reconstruction, so they can train people in clean energy, in reconstruction, so that they can become part of their own future? And that was just something that occurred to me. I don't know if that's something you'd be interested in mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, Yale has actually a campus in the Gulf, I don't remember where, but they don't have one in Palestine, and I don't think they would do this. We are looking for any kind of collaboration and partnership. We have a partnership between Birzeit University and Bard College, where we are actually issuing joint degrees, and people can do that. There are some other programs in support. Harvard has a partnership with us also, and has been very good at working with us. I would like, as a result of this, tomorrow and the day after, talk to some people at Yale, especially about the environmental issues, because ours is actually a unique program, as you saw in the video. In fact, I venture to say it's the best biodiversity center in the whole region, in Western Asia. We have stronger biodiversity research, education, conservation efforts than exists anywhere else, including Israeli universities and Israeli institutions. So I'm very proud of that, and we can certainly would love to partner with others and make it not just a regional institution, which it is already, giving advice to countries like Jordan and Lebanon. I'm going to go to Lebanon also in February to work with them on a joint project. So, and we have joint projects with Jordan. I go through Jordan every time I get out because Israel doesn't let me use our Palestinian airport that they stole from us. What was called Lud Airport. It was built by Palestinians in 1936, was stolen from us when Israel was created in 1948. And they renamed it Tel Aviv Airport. And then when Ben Gurion died, they renamed it Ben Gurion Airport. But that's our airport, and I'm not allowed to use it because I'm not Jewish, and I am one of the oppressed people of Palestine. So I have to go through Jordan, so we have a close collaboration with Jordan on many, many projects, research, conservation, other areas, including Jordan University and the University Applied Research University in Erbil. So yeah, we're building relationship, and we have a relationship with the King's College in London and other places in Ireland, Dublin, University of Ireland in Dublin, etc.
Well, I have a question. The new facility you're building, it looks absolutely beautiful. And honestly, my first thought was, what if Israel destroys it? I mean, you have to have an awful lot of faith to build what you've built and have these great dreams. And I guess it just sort of brought forward for me all the destruction that's already happened, especially in Gaza, of course. But can you just talk a little bit about, I don't think people know as much about the West Bank, what's happened there in the last several months.
I mean, the West Bank is, of course, safer than Gaza. Gaza is being decimated as we speak, an extermination campaign and destruction of 80% of residential buildings have already been gone. All the universities are damaged or destroyed. Most of the healthcare system, 32 out of 36 hospitals are destroyed, and the other 4 are partially damaged and operating with no supplies, things like that. So in terms of the West Bank, it's better off, even though they started in the West Bank. And just like in Gaza, you remember I showed you they start in the north, go down south. In the West Bank, they are doing the same thing. They start in the north, in Jenin, Tulkarm and Nablus, in the refugee camps. They are attacking those and doing some infrastructure damage there, and they are moving south. So eventually they will likely get to Bethlehem and the refugee camps in Bethlehem. They usually go after refugee camps first because that's the areas where there's most resistance to them, and also because they don't like the idea of having refugee camps within what they consider Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, refugees from their own destruction of our society and life. So the short answer is yes, there is a risk. But when Jesse and I talked about how to do this institution before we did it, we thought about doing it independently, buying a piece of land, doing buildings, setting it as an NGO. We considered several options. We settled on doing it as part of Bethlehem University for part of it because of reason of safety. Bethlehem University was the first Palestinian university created, and it was created by the Vatican, so it's actually a Catholic university. And so the land that I'm on, the land that you saw in those pictures, is actually church property, Catholic church. So in a way, this affords some protection, not everything, because in Gaza they also bombed the hospital that belongs to the church, Al-Mahmadani Hospital. That's run by Presbyterian Episcopalian, I forget. But anyways, that's what they did. So, in fact, that was the first hospital they attacked, and they claimed there was an errant missile from Islamic Jihad that fell and killed hundreds of people in that bombing of that hospital. And then once I saw that the world reaction was, we don't like it, shrug our shoulders, so they proceeded to destroy other hospitals. So anyways, it's not fully safety, but we are taking precautions, and for me it doesn't matter, even if not that it doesn't matter, but it's not in my calculation what they could destroy it tomorrow. If they destroy it tomorrow, it means we have had 10 years of productivity, as you saw. And that's good for children and everything. So I don't take into consideration what might happen in the future. They could kill me on the way back. They could take me and put me in a small cell on the way back. But does that mean I stop and I don't do anything? No, we have to keep going. And all of us have to take our risks. We are taking some measured risk alleviation. For example, I want to digitize our collections. So if volunteers want to come, young people want to help us digitize the collections, I have already some of the collections that are important specimens in another location. So at least we save some of the specimens. This didn't happen in Gaza, where there was a small collection of natural history museum, and it was destroyed and there's nothing left of it. So we are taking lessons and we are taking some precautions, but we can never ever, say it's safe, so to speak. There's no such thing in life as safety anyway.
Hello, my name is Fatima Rojas. So I met you, dear Mazin, almost 20 years ago. You gave me this in one rally that we did for immigrants. And so the kind of a question and topic that I wanted to bring is that just seeing all the genocide and ecocide, so we come from like similar situations, like from Mexico, right? Like with the settlers in the 1500s, and the ecocide right now from companies of the United States that are going there, taking the land, going there, taking the water, stealing what's going on in the mines, and so on and so forth. So I guess one of the challenges that I have had with my immigrant community in trying to share what's going on in Palestine, in the Middle East, and the genocide committed by Israel, many obstacles in the way, right? Language, one of them, the lack of news for my community on this topic, and I think also that's true in English. So for popular education, in order to bring our cultures together and build more solidarity. So what are the ways, or what are the ideas that you might have, so we can see our worlds in a parallel way, in that we are in the same, coming from indigenous heritage and supporting and building solidarity.
She's, has similar experiences to the indigenous people of Palestine and wants to know, she wants to build more solidarity with the people of Palestine and wants to know what you think. Is that basically it?
The only thing I would say, not just show solidarity. I actually don't like the word solidarity per se, because it implies that somehow my struggle is different than the Mexican struggle or any indigenous people struggle or Black Lives Matter or anything else. We must show joint solidarity, joint activism, joint struggle. Joint struggle is probably the best two words to think of. Joint struggle means that your struggle is my struggle. And there's no difference. I mean, actually, my first activism in this country was not about Palestine. It was about South Africa. I can tell you the story very briefly. I came from Palestine in 1979, fall 1979, to do my master's degree at the University of Connecticut in Stores. And I wanted to kind of meet girls. So I ran for the presidency of the International Student Association. And to my surprise, I won. So this Nigerian guy comes to me and he says, Mazin, congratulations, you are now our president. What are you going to do about South Africa? And I said, what's wrong with South Africa? This is how idiotic, know nothing about the world I was. I was 23 years old, I didn't know anything. So of course he educated me about apartheid in South Africa. This was January 1980 when I was elected. And Ronald Reagan had just been elected president, had just became president, etc. So we organized an event, he and I. We invited this speaker from London, who many years later I found out was a member of the African National Congress, which was at the time designated as a terrorist organization by the United States. So if that passed on this side of the room, you might pass to this side of the room, that would be great. So, yeah, thank you. So anyways, that's how I organized my first political event in, I think it was April 1980. And since then I've never looked back, 44 years of activism. And I respect people who organize events because it's a lot of work. Now as a speaker, all I have to do is talk and eat. But anyway, I like joint struggle because essentially it is our struggle. It is all our struggles. And they're all connected. Why? Because the enemy is the same. The enemy is those greedy billionaires that are becoming richer and richer off of our backs. And if we don't think like that, if they allow us to think that our struggles are localized, that the struggles here in New Haven are different than the struggles in Gaza, then they have succeeded, actually. They have isolated us, divide and conquer. No, our struggles are highly connected. For many reasons, I don't have time to go through them. Well, I'll tell you one story. One time I was invited to speak in Mumbai in India. Hundreds of people showed up. And I'm embarrassed because I was in Mumbai for a day or two before this event. And I walk the streets of Mumbai and I see all these homeless people. 1 million people in Mumbai are on the streets with nothing, hungry, begging for anything. And so I sat next to the guy who invited me to speak. And I said, and then they're from the lower caste in India. As they call them, the lower caste, untouchables. And I said, why are you interested in Palestine so much and you have all these hundreds of people coming to hear a Palestinian speak? It seems to me you have your own challenges here that are more pressing even than our challenges. And I'll never forget his answer. He said, do you know this guy Narendra Modi? I said, yeah, he's your prime minister, isn't he? President or prime minister? He said, yes. He said, do you know who his best friend is? I said, no. He said, Benjamin Netanyahu. They go golfing together. So my oppressor and your oppressor are one and the same clique of elites. So, Bolsonaro in Brazil, same clique of elites. Why is Bolsonaro pro-Israel, not pro-Palestine? He's against the indigenous people of Brazil and is killing them and wants to make, the rainforest, he wants to make it cow farms. This is the mentality that we face, the people who profit from our suffering as indigenous people. And so we must join hands to work together against those elites. Thanks. Go ahead.
Mazin, there's a reason I can't quit Facebook, and that's primarily because some of the greatest human wisdom, not to mention some of the greatest humor I've ever seen, comes to me via Facebook. And I saw a parable, if you will, or a very short story about how if you take a handful of red ants and you put them in a jar, they'll just walk around. And you take a handful of black ants, put them in the same jar, they'll walk around and avoid each other and do what they gotta do. But if a hand picks up the jar and shakes it, they will start killing each other. Why are we not looking at whose hand is shaking our collective jar?
We are the ants, and the hand that's shaking us and making us fight each other is that hand that we need to chop off, in my humble opinion. But anyways, I totally understand your point.
The billionaire war profiteers that
Yes.
you previously referred to, yes, that is the hand.
Yes.
I'm in favor of a multi-ethnic or multinational state that respects, universal human rights and equality for all. My question, maybe you could help correct my understanding. Now, I understand there's UNRWA for the refugees in Palestine, and then the United Nations has another refugee agency that has the function of the right of return for all the other refugees in the world. But it's my understanding, maybe you can inform me, correct me if I'm wrong, that UNRWA lacks that function of return, of working to return refugees. I know it's 75 years on and all that, and for all the good work that UNRWA does, I know there's a lot of criticism, but there's this question in my mind is, am I correct in understanding, why does not UNRWA also have that aspect of returning refugees to their
UNRWA was the first UN agency created to deal with the refugee crisis. And after the Second World War, this was the crisis. This was the largest number of refugees after the Second World War who were created, and it still is, by the way. 8.5 million of us are refugees or displaced people. So UNRWA, the abbreviation stands for UN Relief and Work Agency for Palestinian Refugees, was specifically created for Palestinian refugees because I didn't think that there was going to be any other refugees coming along. Of course, after that we had, Korea and Vietnam and all these other, in Afghanistan and so forth. But the mandate of UNRWA, as I say, at the United Nations was, as I said, the Relief and Work Agency. What does that mean? It provides relief for them while the world debates ending this problem that the world created, the Europeans created, just to be a humanitarian agency, basically, provide schooling, provide food, provide education for the Palestinian refugees. None of the UN agencies that were created subsequent to this push for the rights of refugees to return. Of course, they all assume that this is an inherent right, and it is, of course, in international law, it's very clear that eventually refugees should be allowed to return to their homes and lands. But the entity you're thinking about, I'm trying to think of its acronym or what it is, but that came later.
UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees.
Yeah, UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees. That was created later, and was created to deal with other refugees. Now you might say, why? Why? Because the first one was named for Palestine, so it was specific. The one later they created for everybody else to also provide similar kind of arrangements to help those refugees, let's say from Afghanistan, who streamed into Pakistan, pending their return when there's a stable government to go back. But none of these UN agencies is an entity that's related to, let's say, enforcement of return of refugees or anything like that. This is part of international legal system weakness, that don't have any enforcement mechanisms for anything. The United Nations really is neither united or any kind of sense. And they created a rigged system where there's a UN Security Council, 15 countries. 5 of them are permanent members of the UN Security Council. Those are the winners of the Second World War. And each one of those countries has a veto power. And only if they all agree, then of course the resolution can be enforced. If they don't agree, then the resolution can't be enforced. So even if, as happened just recently, 14 of the UN Security Council members voted for a ceasefire, and one country, the US, said no, that's it. 14-1 means the resolution did not pass. Why? Because the no of the US is considered veto power, meaning that finished. This is the rigged system that was created that prevents any kind of rationality in international law. So the US protected Israel from implementing any rights for the Palestinians, including the right of refugees to return, which is enshrined in international law, because there's no enforcement mechanisms. And the only enforcement mechanism could come from the UN Security Council. If it's a majority, and not only a majority, but that majority includes all 5 members who have a veto power. If one of them says no, it doesn't matter, the other 14, the law does not pass or the resolution does not pass. So we're basically screwed on that aspect. We're not going to be able to think of these agencies as somehow helping us right to return. But now Israel is also dismantling UNRWA, which is a humanitarian organization, no more and no less. And it's the one that took care of most of the refugees, Palestinian refugees.
I don't know if you want to expand the topic and speak a little bit about what's going on in Syria? No.
Syria. Well, do you want the optimistic scenario or pessimistic scenario?
Optimist.
Pessimist. Well, let's forget this thing about like Gramsci, who said, I have pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. That's what hope is, by the way, is optimism of the will. No, look, Syria, I don't like Bashar al-Assad, he's dictator, etc. But those rebels that were basically American and Israeli and Turkish agents, most of them are mercenaries, are certainly not better than Bashar al-Assad, maybe worse even, maybe same level. But they are not nice people. And they certainly are not going to be interested in democracy in Syria, because they were put there for a purpose, and that purpose is to divide Syria into provinces. And this plan was actually presented by the neocons in the US when I was living here in the early 2000s. That Syria would be divided, that there would be the northeastern portion, which is the Kurdish areas. Those will join Kurds in Iraq and will be a separate entity. The parts around Halab or Aleppo will be annexed to Turkey, and they will be under Turkish domination. And then there's the Alawite regions, Shiite regions, which will be separate. And then there will be the Sunni region, which will be a separate part of Iraq around Damascus and all these places. And then, of course, Israel expands its borders to include the rest of Iraq, which original plan of 1919 at the Paris Peace Conference, they presented that map that shows not only the Golan Heights, but going almost to near Damascus. That will be Israeli territory, and they already started taking Syrian territory. Israel already went in beyond the ceasefire line of 1974 after the October War. So they took Jabal al-Sheikh, which is a very, very important and high mountain. They went in there just this week, by the way, and entered that and occupied, and they said, we're not withdrawing from that. That's it. So Syria will be divided like that, and this is the other classical divide and conquer approach of colonialists. And then after Syria, this is, if you want, a pessimistic scenario. After Syria comes Jordan and Lebanon, which will also be basically destabilized in a way that benefits Israel and benefits the US. And the US remains in the Kurdish areas also because that's where they take the oil, if you want. So this is the plan, this is the ideas. Now, why do I say there's an optimistic scenario? The optimistic scenario for me is like what happened in Iraq when they toppled Saddam Hussein. They toppled Saddam Hussein. What did Netanyahu say to Congress, by the way, at the time? He said, I guarantee you 100%, if you topple Saddam Hussein, you'll get a government in Iraq that's like the government of Saudi Arabia, that will be friendly to the US and Israel. We will have access to that country, and we will stop Iran and all of this stuff. This is what he said in front of Congress. What happened in Iraq? Well, clearly Iraq is not pro-US, even though there are US military in Iraq. There's even missiles coming from Iraq on Israeli areas in solidarity with the Palestinians who are undergoing a genocide. That's because powers always miscalculate outcomes, and once you start a war, you cannot. There are all sorts of variables that enter into the equation. So, my optimistic hope is that the Syrian people will realize this conspiracy, and now having gotten rid of this, guy Bashar al-Assad, that they would get their act together. But I'm not sure if they would be allowed to, in the same way that we in Palestine thought having a Palestinian authority, well, not me, but other Palestinians thought that having a Palestinian authority is a good thing. But it turned out Palestinian authority is a Vichy government for Israel, supposed to Israelis, as I told you, tortured even my friend Basil Large. So, that's where I am on this issue of Syria. There are people who are more experts in Syria that analyze things. What Scott Ritter, for example, was a CIA analyst, I believe. Other people like that who analyze the situation in more detail with more inside knowledge.
But I have two questions. One is, do you have any connection with PRI in Jordan, with the Lawtons, with Jeff Lawton?
What's the name?
The Permaculture Research Institute in Jordan?
No.
No. Aha.
You can connect us.
I'm going to connect you, for sure. He follows you. So
I don't remember, maybe I know him.
Jeff Lawton, he heads up all of the permaculture.
I meet thousands of people. So.
Yeah, he's the head of the Permaculture Research Institute for the side of the world. So that was one thing I wanted to know. And the other thing is, there's whispers, I believe there's whispers right now of maybe a ceasefire in Gaza, maybe. Do you know anything more?
Oh, ceasefire.
Right, like that's kind of new within this week. Do you know if there's any truth to that?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't have any inside information, of course, but I would not be surprised if they declare a ceasefire within a few days in Gaza. Israel is losing a lot of people in Gaza. Israel is losing a lot of its tanks and armored personnel carriers. Its army is depleted, its army is weak, its economy is collapsing. it's really not in a very good position, despite all the nonsense that Netanyahu tries to sell to his public that, hey, we're winning, we're this, we're that. Only thing he's winning at is the genocide, which is his original plan, of course, to satisfy his fascist government, all of them, by the way, not just Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, but also his own Likud party is genocidal from its foundation, from Jabotinsky and his people. And Netanyahu's father used to be an assistant to Vladimir Jabotinsky. And Netanyahu himself is a Polish, as you know, Jew who changed his name to Netanyahu. His original name is Miliowski or something. Anyways, these are fascists in the true sense of the word. And their idea is, how are we going to get the Israeli public? Israel is not a democracy, of course, unless you consider it's a democracy for Jews in the same sense as South Africa was a democracy for white people. So anyways, he is trying to cater to his public and his coalition and everything else. And for that, he is also trying to keep the Israeli public from not knowing the truth about what's going on. And for him, also, the Israelis that were taken by Hamas to exchange prisoners might as well be all dead. In fact, they killed many of them, even on October 7, 2023. More than 200 of the people who were killed by the Israeli military bombing those places like that kibbutz and the cars that were fleeing from that Nova festival that they were having. The Israeli military is the one that bombed them. And he knows that. He knows that this is just an excuse for him to implement his Greater Israel project, which he had presented at the United Nations, actually. I was surprised to hear him speak like that at the United Nations. This is the arrogance of power. He said, we will be the corridor, the connection between Europe and Asia. And he showed this map, and he showed the word Israel. No Palestine, no even Jordan or anything. Israel that has large words, covers the area that's a promised land from the Nile to the Euphrates. And he said, this is the connection between Europe and Asia. This is, of course, a replacement for the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. And then a month before that even, he presented the idea of the Ben Gurion Canal from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, which would replace the Suez Canal. So this is the other two reasons when I mentioned about Gaza, why it's not just gas fields off of Gaza. There's these two other reasons why Gaza is to be removed. And this was always in the works as a plan, but Israel always takes any excuse of violence to implement pre-existing plans, as they did in 1948, as they did in 1967, any excuse they come up with to implement pre-existing plans of building an empire. So I think in this case, I don't see any possibility of, even if they declare a ceasefire, as they just did in Lebanon, it would be the same thing. A ceasefire in Lebanon, within 1 week, Israel had violated it 60 times. Who's going to hold Israel accountable? The US, the UN? Nobody. I mean, it's might makes right in our region. That's as simple as that. And Israel takes that and does what it wants. So even if they declare a ceasefire tomorrow with Hamas and they get a few prisoners back and they release a few Palestinian prisoners, so what? Israel will come in and bomb the shit out of any place in Gaza that's left. So.
My name is Camille Rashid. So I'm reading the book by Ta-Nehisi Coates called The Message.
By who?
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
African-American writer.
African-American writer, and he made the statement that we are witnessing a genocide in service of apartheid. That's what he's been saying on his book tour. And he's been become very much an item. So I didn't know if you heard about him or if you had anything to say in regards to that.
Millie Renault, New Haven. All of us have been trying to do what we can do to stop Biden in the U.S. Congress for sending money. Any ideas of what we can do?
Yeah. Well, you've been doing it, and actually, I want to tell you, when I told Hiyam I'm coming here, I asked her if she had any message for me to tell people, and she said, are they supportive of us? Do they care about us? I said, yeah, the people do, the governments don't. She said, well, then thank the people for me. So I thank you for all that you are doing, and people, to varying degrees, of course, have been active. The student-led movements and campaigns at the universities, blocking of, Grand Central Station and Wall Street even, and the Congress, the Senate. And my son is involved in San Francisco. They even blocked the San Francisco Bridge and all of this stuff. It's been remarkably good and important to continue this struggle and to keep the pressure on politicians and keep nagging them. It's really important. There are a lot of things that can be done. There's civil disobedience, there are other things that are being done, and we just need to keep them up and even up the ante a little more. And I think we are on the right track. Sometimes we don't know how close we are until it happens. So I think, what can I tell you? On my website, Qumsiyeh.org, there is a list of 75 items. I need to update them, 76 items that you can do. I keep up the years. From boycott, divestment, sanctions, to media work, to lobbying, to humanitarian aid, to support to organizations like ours and many others. There are dozens of things that people can do, but I also tell people, do what you are good at. For example, Stan is very good at the struggle again, thestruggle.org. And you can watch his videos. Some of them, are really now historical archives of very important people that he interviewed over these years. So he's good at this media work and having this community, TV shows. And, students may be more active on campus, and that's good. That's their skill. Somebody interested in environment can write about the environment. If any of you want to do research with us, by the way, we're happy to collaborate with you and do research on any subject that you would like. So there's a ton of things you can do. You can also support. You can, by volunteering, come, as I said, welcome. How many of you have been to Palestine, by the way? Raise your hand. Good number, quarter about. So the rest of you need to come.
I am Palestinian.
We would be happy to host you.
I am Palestinian. I never went to Palestine. I would like to volunteer.
Yeah, so you would be more than welcome. Don't come all at one time.
So, Henry, do you have an announcement or a question?
Short question.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
So, do your students have direct connections with Yale's for Palestine or the Southern Connecticut equivalent? And
well, this is a very good point. I think actually it would be great to have more connections. Some students, I'm sure, are connected to student movements around the world, but there's no coordinating body for student movements around the world, and that's something that needs to be worked on, and to connect people, because they can energize each other, young people. So I think that's important to do more of that. I'm happy to help because I'm connected to several universities, and even now in Gaza, as Gaza was destroyed, the university, as we said, scholasticized. I'm connected to students and faculty in Gaza, in tents, but they have internet. This is a very important point. So, you know, so there's lots of potential. Stan, I think, is last.
Yeah, I want to urge you to prepare for a much more difficult situation coming up in January. Repression's going to get a lot harder, a lot worse. One of the things is a bill. It gives the Secretary of the Treasury the way that when you talk to legislators, it's the nonprofit killer bill.
Right.
They know what it's about.
Yeah.
And it passed the House, and maybe it won't pass the Senate because the Democrats are still around. But in January, you have a whole new ballgame. And what it says is the Secretary of the Treasury can say a nonprofit is a supporter of terrorism. And that's it. The nonprofit loses its tax-exempt status, and then all the right-wing wolves say they're terrorists, and the banks say we can't put you, we can't administer your accounts, etc., etc. So that's what's coming in one form or another. So that's just one part of it. So think about how you might struggle, how you might secure yourself by better passwords, by encrypting your email in 10 or 15 different ways. And promoting Enduring Peace, we just had a speaker talk about that in this room a couple days ago. But I want to, I'm not just urging you to call your center. That's okay, that's good, but prepare yourself for a new era in which we're still going to do the struggle, to do the fight for justice in Palestine and everywhere.
One more.
And remember, whoever is telling you that the other ants in the jar are the enemy is the one who's shaking the jar.
Thank you. Just a reminder about donating. Maybe the person at the door there, you can have a basket or something, give $5, $10, whatever on your way out. If you write a check, Bethlehem University Foundation would be the name to put on it. There's a basket there that's going there. So thank you very much for attending, and I hope everybody signed the email list.